Sexuality is a much bigger story than sex alone, and our culture unfortunately has made this much a focal point. What we need to understand is our sexuality is very much our whole identity, and it's very much who we are as a person and how we interact with everybody else in our lives, not just people of the opposite gender, but really how we interact with people. Our sexuality is primarily an attractive force that draws us to other people. We are drawn together as a community, as a society, as families, as friends. We're drawn together as people because we need others to exist. We don't exist in a vacuum. But we operate appropriately in different relationships, and in different areas we have boundaries, and appropriate boundaries. And so you don't fall in love with your sister because it just doesn't seem appropriate, but we know that. But equally then with other people of the opposite gender, we manage ourselves so that we are open to the correct connections and to the correct way of relating. Unfortunately, sex has become such a hot topic that it seems to be the first question that's asked in romantic relationships, not the emotional development of the two people or the friendship and the shared life. And too often the sexuality or the sexual experience it distorts the relationship and has to carry the weight of an undeveloped emotional relationship. And it can't sustain that, and often it fails with painful results. So essentially our sexuality is around developing emotional depth and maturity, and out of that forming friendships, and out of a special friendship finding that person that will be a life partner, and sex is an appropriate expression of self with that person and an appropriate place to go deep with a person. I find that in terms of long-term relationships, a question that comes up for people early on is about the sexual compatibility of the relationship, and a concern that there should be a sexual experience to see if the relationship is viable. And that's really the wrong question to ask, because essentially our relationship is about emotional compatibility, and that's the area that we need to explore and experience. When we become sexually involved, the emotional side becomes compromised and cannot operate appropriately, and so the relationship becomes distorted from the beginning. I think preferable is to begin a relationship and deepen the friendship angle, the companionship, the shared interest, the shared emotion. And as the friendship deepens, so the intimacy can deepen, and eventually the sexuality can be an area of exploration. Our sexuality is a profound and unique gift to each of us, and the issue around romantic relationships is that we need to preserve the gift and not allow it to be squandered or spent too easily, but really determine in relating if there is emotional compatibility, and to develop the emotional base before we get sexually involved. Sexual involvement will affect our emotional development and almost prevent us deepening or growing emotionally, because whenever we get close, the emotional aspect pulls us off track and is an end in itself.